Hi. Good, how are you?
Thank you.
And you're the student? Okay. Yes, we took it.
These are the,
Okay, I wasn't recorded the first time.
yeah. Well, we
Okay,
city retained exhibits.
got it. Okay, I'll.
Matt, if you want to look at any of those, I mean.
I brought the application.
Yeah. I think that's exhibit A, but if you want them to have a copy of it, hand it out.
I actually remember the page.
So strong.
Yeah, this is- So that one's good. So my electronic copy of Johnson.
We got these things. See what's this.
But if you did-
Are not the same.
No,
These
I
are
made that right.
Okay. Okay, and this is 1 through 8. Very good.
1
This is
through 9.
1 through 9.
10.
1 through 10.
There's the White County.
But they're already on 3 marks. You don't need 3 marks. Okay.
I've got some. So we did get 9.
Could be. I guess when you want to, maybe it's a housekeeping matter. we can just put it on the bill for nature.
I don't want anything changed down until you get here.
Think so. I mean, if he does, I'll take it down quick. Matt,
Serious, do you need everything taken down or just your matter?
so
Do you want everything taken down or just your matter?
just our.
Just your matter, okay.
Copy that. Okay, you still got it.
Yes.
I do, yeah.
We took in some water on
Everybody ready? Let her get set up.
Just a second, sorry.
All right, since everybody's ready, we'll go ahead and call to order the special call meeting and continue, which is a continuation of the vested rights hearing for November 16th, 2021. Need to have a motion to adopt our agenda. Craig makes the motion, Tom seconds. All in favor? Unanimous. All right, y'all should have a copy of the minutes from our October meeting. They weren't quite ready because we had the public hearing attached to that, so they weren't ready for approval at our last council meeting. So y'all should have gotten a copy of that with your agenda packets. And just for clarity's sake, she's going to take down the whole meeting. That's what Matt had requested. I don't have a problem with that, but as it relates to a record for the vested rights hearing, this portion of it is general business. It's not connected to that portion of the hearing. It's not really part of the record in the sense that it deals with matters that aren't encompassed by the proceeding here. Right, okay. So this is just a little bit of housekeeping for us to go ahead and clean up because we weren't able to approve those at our last council meeting. We just go ahead and throw that in here. So can I get a motion to approve our October 14th minutes? I'll mix that motion. Do you have a second? Larry seconds. All in favor? Yes, all right. All right, then we'll move on to our continuation of the determination of vested rights hearing. I believe one thing we want to do just a little bit of remind y'all of the format. It's going to be this same as pretty much same as last time. We're going to try to keep a little more decorum, a little more control on things this time. Try to keep things a little, so we weren't too bad, but I don't want to do as far out as we did last time. So try to keep that under control, and we'll be as civil as we can with each other and move and hopefully move forward with what we have here tonight. Anything? So because it's been a year, may want to have a summary of the procedures that we adopted this year. Yeah, if you've got those in front of you. I do, and you can do it, or it says the mayor or his designee will explain the procedures. If you want me to do it, I can. Since you got it in front of you. All right, so this was the resolution adopting procedures that was done last year when this hearing first started. The introduction basically sort of taking place with the mayor, or his designee. So that's me tonight. We'll explain the procedures. Mayor's designee should be the presiding officer of the hearing. And then any questions or comments should be directed to the presiding officer. And the presiding officer will consult with the town attorney if necessary. Any objections or other issues raised should be ruled on by the presiding officer after consultation with the town attorney. Such ruling is final unless the council by majority following a duly seconded motion votes to override the presiding officer's decision. So
Any objections be addressed to Mike. Mike can consult with me if he needs to, but he'll make the decision and then council does have an override provision. Hearings in open session, we're here for that now. The way that we'll progress with the discussion, this is not even though it is in a public setting, so people are allowed to be here, it is not the kind of public hearing that we have had in other circumstances. It's really more of an opportunity for the applicant to explain their position. But as the mayor is designated will at appropriate time set forth request the identification of witnesses, if any, including the ones presenting evidence. They'll be sworn in at a court reporter. The mayor or any council member has the discretion to introduce any documents regarding the petition unless objected to by a member of council and affirmed by a vote of the majority. The mayor or any member of council has the discretion to call any person present to testify regarding the petition unless objected to by council. So there's no override procedure there. The issues considered at the hearing held here will be confined to whether the applicant has the vested right to use or develop property for STVR purposes. No other issues should be allowed or entertained. So we're just here on that singular issue tonight. We're going to prove on the petitioner by preponderance of the evidence. We'll kind of explain what that means later, but the petitioner is not required to be represented by an attorney. However, they are, and that's fine. And lastly, this is quasi judicial proceedings, so the mayor and council is not intended to be judicial; it's quasi judicial. So mayor and council doesn't have to apply formal rules of evidence. You can use those rules of evidence as a guide. For example, you are authorized to not accept statements that are made outside of these proceedings, but introduced by writing. If the person making the statements isn't here, but that being said, it is a little bit of a relaxed standard. It's not exactly the way that it is in court. And then, the presiding officer will maintain order and decorum in the proceedings. Mike's touched on that. The way that we'll basically run this is the petitioning party is going to present their stuff. What happened last time was we took a few witnesses out of order so that they could go ahead and provide their testimony and then leave, so they didn't have to stay for the rest of it. But in general, you do an opening statement. Matt has already made his opening statement in the prior proceeding. And then regarding the presentation of evidence, you'll have documentary evidence presented to the presiding officer. I think Matt's handed out notebooks for those who don't have the application. Any other documents to be done that way. After documents presented, the mayor and town council or the town attorney may question the petitioner or other persons submitting a document regarding any documents presented or testimony. The petitioner can call witnesses, and after a witness testifies, the mayor and council, town personnel may question that witness. And it gives us leeway to do this in a manner that makes no sense, which is what we did last time, to take witnesses before we did the opening statement. At the end of, repeat those procedures for all of your witnesses and documents that are presented. When that's through, we'll have closing statements. And then the council can consider whether to conclude the hearing. And then the hearing is, there's basically a 30-day time frame for a decision, 30-day max from the close of the hearing. Then there's some other stuff that's probably not really applicable to tonight's hearing per se, but the actual rules of procedure are available. They're also codified in the ordinance itself, which has been on the code now for roughly a year. So with that, those are basically the procedures. We've followed them for several witnesses now. Where I think we left off was there was one witness that was presenting. I don't know if you have more witnesses than that.
Two more. Okay. One more after the current witness.
So after David. Okay. Well, so that'll be kind of along the procedures that we talked about. And so with that,
Keep Trump thing, hold on here. There we go. On Zoom, couldn't see. I figured. All right, then, are there any other questions? Questions from council? All right, I guess we'll go ahead and step on back up.
Mr. Mayor and council members, before I recall David Irvin, I wanted to make sure I introduced all of my clients, David Irvin, Marcia Brock, Johnny Irvin, Brian Irvin. And I'll call David Irvin, that's some close works. Absolutely, go ahead.
For you folks that don't know me, I'm Johnny Irvin, originally from the area, from Habersham. I've been a resident here for over 40 years. I think I'm probably the longest resident of two of the properties here now. Raised all my children here. Have one grandchild, and her name is Tula. So my family has a deep roots. My great grandfather is buried towards the Lake Burton. Like I said, I was born in Habersham County. If you know anything at all about Clarksville, Georgia, you know the big building in the curve downtown is called the Charm House. That's where I was born. It was Walker's Clinic back then. So all my childhood has been here. My grandfather brought us up here all the time. Because he was raised, he was one of 14. Papa was about 14. And we're not fly-by-nighters. We have great respect for Duluth Falls. We just want to bring a little bit of the history back. We even had a building pretty much designed in technique and all of one of the old hotels. At the turn of the century, I understand that there were 21 hotels here. I know that there were two that had over 200 beds in it. So our project is a small project, but we do plan hopefully increasing that, bringing some of the charm and money back to the community. Our project, I won't say how much we bring back in, but my wife has a couple vacation rentals over on the other side of the lake, and she's paid into the treasury here a good bit of money every year for 10, 12 years, maybe longer than that. And I just want you to know that we plan on doing everything right. We'll do something nice, and I would certainly appreciate and consider the person a favor with all of this consideration. Sorry.
So, all right, with that, I call David Irvin.
If you don't mind, just for purposes of the record, I'm not gonna have any questions for him, if I can just swear him in.
David Irvin?
Yeah.
Or
Johnny.
Okay, sure.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony that you read what the ordinance says? I'm gonna ask you one question, follow up on that. Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're about to give on the issue pending before this council should be the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Every word.
And just a minute ago, you kind of made a little bit of a narrative statement there. We didn't swear you in beforehand, but this is sort of the flexibility I was talking about in the sense of this quasi judicial. So are the statements you've just made, now that you're under oath, true and correct, to the best of your knowledge?
I didn't understand this.
Are the statements that you just made, so when you made them, you hadn't been sworn in yet, but are the statements that you just made true and correct? to the best
Every
of your-
word.
Okay. That's all I have.
David Irvin. Who's swearing in tonight? Porter.
Well, I don't mind. Who do you want to start?
Go ahead. Yeah, that's fine. Keep going.
In the meantime, I've paid my fee and become a notary, so. All right, Mr. Irvin, do you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give and the issue pending before this council should be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do, always.
All right, Mr. Urban, 13 months ago, you were testifying to the mayor and the council. You know, we've got a new council member. Let's pick up where we left off. We are here asking the mayor and council to extend, recognize vested rights on the work you did on 23 lots to have short-term vacation rentals. So tell us a little bit about what vested rights on these 23 lots for short-term vacation rentals, what that means to you.
And that, if I could, I think where we were last time when we left off was he had presented testimony and I was questioning him on that testimony. Mr. Mayor, it's kind of up to you. It has been a year, so I don't want to have to start back over on all the rest of it. So if you want him to go first, then I think that's fine. If you want to finish it up this way, then it's fine too.
I think it'd be fine, sure, to go ahead and you start and we'll pick it back up.
Might reorient and brush up on
Yeah.
things. What is vested rights on these 23 lots for short-term vacation rentals? What's that mean to you? What do you want to communicate to the mayor and council?
Vested rights to me is not only a financial vested rights, but we've got emotional vested rights in this community. I know that some people have said that we're outsiders, that the people that we've had with us are outsiders. That, well, I think it speaks for itself when you hear about mine and Johnny's background. Like I said, like Johnny said, he was born and raised in Habersham County. I was born in Habersham Hospital the year it was formed. We both raised our children here in Habersham, Johnny partly in Rayburn County, I guess. He has lived here, I guess, most of his adult life. I've lived right next door here in the Hollywood area most of my adult life. And we have some emotional ties here. Our ties go way back. I remember when Jimmy Young used to have soup cornbread drives here in the town to raise money for the fire department, whatever. Both Johnny and I both attended those and been part of the community that way. I spoke in favor of Tallulah Falls having Georgia Power let water be released from the dam when they were getting their 80-year license renewal. It's been several years back. It was forwarded right about the same time the state park was formed. And the big group that carried the ball in that was the whitewater rafting groups. But I was there with them, and it was about me and I guess Ronald Vandiver. We're about the only locals, I guess, besides the whitewater people that spoke in favor of having whitewater releases. I met at Chamber of Commerce in Habersham County when the DNR director was there to do a presentation on the state park. And back then they weren't looking at releasing very much water into the gorge. I think that Georgia Power probably at that time didn't want the aggravation of it, I guess, I don't know. And DNR, of course, had a partnership with them here in Tallulah Falls. And I had to speak before a large group of people that didn't understand all what was taking place. But ultimate outcome of that conversation with the DNR director was, he said, we're just on different sides of the fence. And of course, there was a good negotiation on how much water would be and how often it'd be released into the gorge. And I think it turned out good for everybody. And I am not here wanting to fight with any of y'all. I'm wanting to try to work things out and And it's not my intention to get into a fight, but I'm not that person that's going to back away when I feel like my rights are being taken away. And they are. There's no doubt about it in my mind. But anyway, beyond that, I've also been involved with Toledo Falls School many years. I've taught to several classes there, and still have a working relationship with Toledo Falls School. Know Dr. Peavy very well, and Johnny and I both have been a part, silent part. We don't pound our chest, and I don't like doing this. I don't like telling things that I do to try to help organizations around, but I've been accused of not being a part of this community. And I've been accused of not contributing to the community. And I'm sorry, that's just not true.
Where have you,
And,
where have you gone to work every day since 1996?
Since 1996, our office has been here in Toledo Falls. And we've been quiet, I think. And I think we've been a good asset to the Toledo Falls community. I know that the past police force, Mr. Gocher and some of the other police officers y'all have done a good job of I remember meeting him over there, meeting one of his deputies when y'all had a deputy. When someone would evidently was in the community with a gun. And he wanted to go through our office and make sure that they had not broken into our office and was there. And I went through with him on that because of course I knew the office better than he did. But it wasn't Mr. Gocher, it was one of his deputies. And I don't remember the young man's name. But anyway, I know I'm rambling some, but
What'd you bring with you here today?
actually Mary Beth, on numerous occasions, come when she used to work with the Whitewater Association, used to ask us to help sponsor. And we've always been a major sponsor whenever we asked. I think they usually put the people at top. It's a good sponsor, but these are old, but I've kept them around because they're sort of neat. But we sponsored the Whitewater Festival several times. Burger King, we is what I'm saying. Of course, most of y'all know, I think Larry knows, probably Joey, and I'm not sure about y'all too, but Johnny and I are the Burger King operators in Clayton, Georgia, and also in Haversham, Pernilla. But and we operate other Burger Kings around Northeast Georgia, where we've grown up. But anyway, I've sold tickets to Willenda Walk. They came to our high school, got 4 of us out of school that they knew would be honest. And we sold tickets to that. And we parked them out here in the cow pasture right there where they have his last days. That's where we parked them. And I didn't realize I was part of history back then. I was a young fella, just graduating from high school. And so we've contributed to the town. We've helped support the town, been supportive of the town. We've been supportive of Toledo Falls School. I'm not sure if Victory Homes is in city limits, but as far as I'm concerned, it is. I've been a big supporter of Victory Home for many years. And I've delivered food there and I've eaten with those men there. Of course, it's an alcohol drug rehab, Christian organized. They used to attend our church a lot. They attend different churches around. I've played basketball with a lot of those men. My son has. And so the director there now, I knew Mr. Venerable from way back. And of course, Houston Jenkins used to be on the board there. And, my son was recently asked to be on the board there by Ben Huff, who's the chairman of the board there. And he went to church with me at Antioch. And so I've worshiped with those men. Brian Stevens used to preach over there some. And Walter Singletary, Reverend Walter Singletary went with me over there. He wasn't even aware of Victory Home. He's been around here at Hills Crossing for years. They've carried him over there. But anyway, so we've been involved with Victory Home a lot. And,
David, you mentioned your son, Brian. When and why did he move back to Georgia?
well, Brian, he used to play tennis in the high school tennis team, and Randy Morris was the coach of a tennis team back when he was of Toulouse Falls tennis team back then. And he's played tennis here a lot. He's played tennis on this court right up here that's on the park. He and I both played there. My daughter has too. And I've told you all this before, we both swam. We used to have a swimming pool at the top of Hickory Mountain. It was a community pool. We used to swim there. Larry and Wayne came out there a couple of times, checked me out, make sure I was property owner, because he's going to chase me off. And but that's go way back, isn't it, Larry? But anyway, I remember Larry we used to eat here at the restaurant, and we'd see him there for breakfast sometimes on Saturdays. But so we got ties with this, and Brian, he's been in the, he's worked many years, several years with Charlestown Hotels, and he's got a lot of extensive service experience in it. Of course, Johnny and I have operated Valley Springs over here in Billard for 25, 30 years. It's short-term vacation rental. And we've not had any problems over there. The people in the community like us. The neighbors like us. There's only been one, we've never had the police in 20, 25 or 30 years. We've never had the police over there one time. We did one time, someone called, because we're close. And they said that there's someone out here after our closing hour, we tell them to go to bed at 10 o'clock. It's quiet hours after that. And they were out, had a campfire. And so rather than myself drive, I called up the Burger King in Clayton and asked Glenn Alstead, who's, by the way, just now getting ready to come back to work for us. He'd left us for a while and he decided that grass wasn't greener. But he's a big guy, about like you. And he went out there and he said, all right, folks, you're going to need to put out your campfire and go to bed. And as far as I know, and Marcia have to tell me, as far as I know, that's the only time that we've had any problem there. The people come back because it's quiet and it's run right. We take care of it. We manage it. We keep it in good repair, keep the landscaping good and everything. And so we've got a good reputation in what we're already doing. And not only with the local community, but with the tenants. And so our goal is to bring something like that back here. And Brian has experience in this. This has disrupted his life. I was planning on retiring. I've spent 2 years on this now. And I don't want to fight. And I hope y'all don't either. But I'm not going to be taken advantage of either. There can be common ground. Because we're not going to run something bad. Brian took up his roots, moved from Charleston here, had all that experience, and he's worked on this now for over a year. He's got great experience. He's a good man. He's a Christian man. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't been treated like a Christian. I've tried my best to act like a Christian. So anyway, we got roots here. And we don't intend to have anything that's going to disrupt people. I mean, I know the choice up to y'all whether we go to war or not, but I don't want to. Just want to let y'all know that.
So Brian Irvin, your son, moved here back to Georgia from Charleston. months before the ordinance was released, and he had already been working on these 23 lots for short-term vacation rental before that.
Yeah, he'd been in communication with me, I guess probably at least 6 months before he moved. He moved in January or longer, because we started our permitting on in July. And about a year or two before he moved, he'd been in communication with us.
And I'll pass out the transcript before we go from 13 months ago, but your son Brian was the one who presented those $780,000 of receipts and expenditures.
That's
on
right,
these
him
23
and
lots.
Marshall, and
Okay.
some other people office board.
And is that amount more now?
I'd say we're well over $1 million.
So in addition to the short-term vacation rental you and Johnny did, what are some other prototypes that gave you the vision for these 3 lots? And how'd you get started with spending time and money on these 23 lots for short-term vacation rental?
Well, to start out, Brian had checked to see if there's short-term rentals already here. There were.
How did he find that out?
It's easy, just go on the internet. But Johnny and I,
Were they in residential areas?
yes,
And is that in the materials?
that's
we're
in the
presenting now?
materials. It's been confirmed by documentation that a lot of it was hidden from us until discovery, but the mayor was saying, many times said it's under the radar. The current mayor. But there's short-term rentals already here.
Advertised on the internet.
I advertised on the internet.
And that's before the short-term vacation rental ordinance was enacted.
Oh, way before we even applied. It went all the way back at least to 2018.
When did you start working on these 23 lots for short-term vacation rental?
We bought the lots in 2016. And I guess Johnny and I started doing work on the 4 lots on the lake, probably late 2018, clearing it off some where we could see what was there. And then we got our permits and everything to move dirt and everything in 2019, put the roadway in there. And then we applied for a permit for the 5 lots, which we needed those for one of them for the septic drain field for what we was planning on the lake. And then also we put on those rental cabins.
And at the last hearing 13 months ago, you brought Ronnie Davidson.
That's right. We brought, and that's another thing, everybody we've used is local.
Who built this building?
Ronnie Davidson designed this building. That's my understanding
Who
is,
built a lot of buildings up here?
my understanding is he indicated to us that he designed Professor Helms' house. But he's the one that did our designing. And so he's local. James Irvin, he's not in relation, even though I got a brother named James Irvin. But James Irvin, he's not related. He did the engineering. He's out of Clarksville. He's smart. He's well respected by the EPD and other people. And he helped us get our EPD permits and everything for building the steps down the lake, which we had some issues there, but the town sort of gave us some problems there. But anyway, he's local. We had Claudia Lau testify for us. She's a local real estate agent. We had Jerry Hartness, who's now the mayor of Demers. He's just elected the mayor of Demers. He's another real estate man. He testified for us. We had your past mayor, Trip Franklin, who used to work at Blue Falls School. He testified for us about when he was mayor, how they wanted something like this in the town. And so we've had a lot of people, it's all local.
And in that transcript from the last hearing, are the details about the expenditures in addition to the application, does that show the money you spent on short-term vacation rentals before this ordinance was enacted?
Yes.
All right, so of the 23 lots, 9 of them were down near the lake,
That's right.
and 14 of them were up on the mountain.
That's right.
And of the 9 on the lake, you got 4 that are on the lake, and that was gonna be townhomes.
That's
You
right.
got 5. One lot was gonna be for the septic system,
And cabins.
and then cabins on
Right.
4.
That's right. The only one we applied for rezoning on was the 4 on the lake because of density. And then when we had our first hearing, and there was a lot of questions asked and everything, we, everybody said, well, you're gonna have to get part of the 5 lots rezoned as commercial too, because that's where the septic was, the drain field was. And the big commotion is that they's afraid that we put something else there rather than townhomes and cabins.
So on these 23 lots, you're committed to doing short-term vacation rental.
Yes, sir.
And in terms of the time and money you spent on short-term vacation rental on these 23 lots, how much of that was done after you had conversations with town officials over the years about short-term vacation rentals?
Could you repeat that now?
Sure. Of the work you did and the money you spent on these 23 lots for short-term vacation rentals, how much of that was done after you had conversations, you and your family and your office with town officials about short-term vacation rental?
Well, predominantly most of it.
Okay, tell us about that.
Well, I guess the first conversation we ever had was Johnny talked to Mary Beth, told her we was gonna build something nice next door.
Was she on the town council?
She's
at
on
that time?
town council, yes. And then we made several trips,
And did,
Johnny and I both.
real quick, did she say, no, you can't do that, we don't allow short-term vacation rentals?
Well, I don't know. I don't think that came up. It's just, he said he was gonna build something nice there.
And did she let you go down?
And she
to the
let us
lake?
go down multiple times, use her steps, go down to the railroad bed. I carried Brian and his wife, Laura Claire, down there before they moved. Showing what he was getting into, what he would be engaged in helping us develop.
What did she ask for from you on the property line?
She said that would we have a problem, she putting up a privacy fence. I told her that our tenants I didn't see where our tenants would give her any problem, but I didn't have any problem with that we'd actually probably put a row of trees up or something along there anyhow.
What about permits? What permits did you pursue prior to?
Well, we got in March 2019, I think it was, we got the road that we put in there. And in May, I think 2019, we did the permits for the 5 septic lots. Now, we didn't need any rezoning for cabins. And so we got that. And then we got some other permits later on too, of course.
Okay, so March of 2019, you got land disturbance permits from the town.
That's right.
And was there inquiry from the town about what you get those permits for? What are you building?
No, the mayor, was Mayor Dobbs at that time. She, that all it said there. I came to the meeting just to see if they had any questions, and I stayed till the end of the meeting. And she apologized for keeping me that long because she said she could have took me earlier if she knew why I was there. And there was very little questions, but she did make a comment. They was talking a lot about water, about us tapping on the town's water. I said, well, we were looking at that.
Did y'all discuss what you were building?
Well, no, not really. Not at that time. We talked about the 5 lots, clearing them off and doing engineering and everything on them. And for a development of the cabins, whatever on those. We had already on the permits in March 2019, put on that we were doing engineering and everything for a development. And so that was on both permits that we were planning on doing engineering and architecturals and everything for development.
In May of 2019, did you get a second round of land disturbance permits?
Yes.
And then in June of 2019, did you talk to the town about a rezoning for density for the town?
Yes, we asked Ms. Laperouse for an application for a rezone.
And during that application process, did you tell everybody you were planning to do short-term vacation rentals?
Yeah, and when we presented it, everything in July, yes.
Okay. So July of 2019, did you have a meeting after the application, or was that August? Yes,
Well,
you-
no, we had a meeting, I think it was July is when we had the meeting. Or no, wait a minute. I have to look back and see on that, but there was a meeting in July or August where all the questions came up.
Summer of 2019, whether it was July or August, you had filings and meetings here in
Oh, yeah.
Toledo Falls.
Yeah.
And you made it clear to everybody you're doing short-term
That's right,
vacation rentals.
yes, right.
Okay. And at the August meeting, what did the Mayor Dobbs, say to you about the townhomes, where she would prefer them
Well,
to be?
at the end of the meeting, I guess there was a lot of conversation about water, pollution in the lake and whatever, and which we, I said, well, there's a parking lot crossed over by the state parks 10 times as big as the parking lot we built and everything. And we plan on doing a first class. We'd work with them on anything like that, just talk about testing water and whatever, but she said, well, wouldn't they look real good up here on these five septic lots, what we call septic cabin lots? Those townhomes would look real beautiful right there.
And were those residentially zoned?
They say it was residential.
And were they even included in a rezoning application
No.
at that time?
No.
So the current mayor at the time said short-term vacation rentals right next door on 5 lots.
Yeah.
And August 8th, 2019, a day after the presentation about short-term vacation rentals, did the town pass a moratorium on short-term vacation rentals?
They did, and I didn't find out about it probably for over a month. But then when I saw the moratorium, I wasn't real concerned because it said regulate, license and collect taxes and stuff like that. And Johnny had been doing that for years. And we do that in ours and Dillard, Raven Gap. We pay their taxes, everything. We don't try to skirt anything. And so I didn't have any problem with that. Our regulations are for tenants, probably be as strict as what they came up with, is what I felt like.
So you had already started work on short-term vacation rentals prior to the moratorium?
Yeah.
And the moratorium didn't talk about prohibiting short-term vacation rentals.
No, there was nothing in there about forbidden.
And
I had no problem with regulation at all.
in your previous work, have you done auditing for government agencies?
Yes, sir. I used to work with state department audits.
So regulation that's mutually beneficial between property owners and the government, and government revenue, that's something you're comfortable with.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
I've audited counties, boards of education, counties, boards of education, and government agencies, several government agencies. Audited University of Georgia.
And months before the ordinance was enacted, did you communicate to the town that you were fine with regulation of revenue? And did you
Oh, yeah.
constructively communicate about that?
Yeah, they knew that, yeah.
But you also communicated the fact that we were midstream on a development project that your family had spent.
Oh, yeah, we'd
years.
already spent a lot of money on time, yeah.
In October of 2019, tell us about the meeting at that time about the zoning map.
In October 2019, the state is humorous, but it was not humorous. There's a lot of confusion. We started attending all the meetings when we saw that, we wanted to make sure we were part of whatever regulation might come up. But I guess it's a combined downtown development authority meeting and whatever, they were trying to determine what what the proper zoning map was. They pulled out about, five different maps of zoning. And on those maps, Hickory Nut Mountain didn't have any type of zoning on it. It did, there was one map that showed the, what do you call it, comprehensive land use, is that what you call it, map? And that map showed the area that we were talking about developing as village residential. And I've looked up, Brian's looked up the definition of village residential, and it indicates that that area was, can be shops and places to rent and live and stuff like that. But I mean, at that point in time, I didn't know exactly what village residential meant. In reality, I found that out later.
So the 14 of your 23 lots that you've been working on short-term vacation rental, they didn't even have residential zoning designated on them as of October.
I didn't see any type of zone, and that's been confirmed. They actually did not pass that zoning map until the very day that they passed the new ordinance
And that was July
for
20
short-term vacation rental.
July 23rd, 2020.
That's right.
The short-term vacation
That's
rental
right.
ordinance was passed. Okay. November of 2019, shortly after the election that year in 2019, you recall going to a town meeting.
Shortly after 2019,
Yes.
first of 2020.
No, November of 2019.
Oh, November
Shortly
of
after.
2019. In November of 2019, we, there was a zoning meeting in which planning and zoning meeting where they discussed short-term vacation rental. They're supposed to make a recommendation to the council. And there was 4 people there that said that they were all for short-term vacation rental up the mountain, and only one person there that said he wasn't sure. I'm not sure if I'm for that or not. Barbara Rice said, I'm not sure if I want that. But Mary Beth, Mayor Early, which was, I think, on the zoning council at that time, was for it. Then Ms. Dyer, I think, was for it. And I think Mr. Knudsen was there, but I don't remember him saying anything.
What about Van Knight?
And Van Knighton, who was chairman of the zoning council, said he was for short-term vacation rentals.
All right. So in 2019, you were at a meeting and various town officials.
Actually, Marshall was at that meeting,
Okay. All right. And it looks like,
but I've read the minutes and everything.
looks like Mr. Knight's tuned in by Zoom. Right there.
Okay,
January of 2020,
yes.
do you recall a town meeting where short-term vacation rentals were discussed?
Then in January, it came back up and everything changed. And I don't know what changed it, but early in 2020, and I was at that meeting with Marcia, and the minutes read like there was a crowd of people there, but there wasn't. There was just the zoning council and me and Marcia, and maybe 1 or 2 other people. I know Barbara Rice was there, but there was a motion by Van Knighton and a second by Mr. Knudsen to allow short-term vacation rentals and confirm that short-term vacation rentals to be in R1 residential. And then Barbara raised Cain, and they reversed that. Of course, they all knew what we were building. They knew that we were in process of doing short-term.
Was anybody else in the town discussing doing short-term vacation rental other than you at that time?
Was anybody?
Any new short-term vacation rental other than the urban?
Not that I know of.
And in February of 2020, before COVID hit, was there a town council meeting where short-term vacation rentals were discussed?
Yes, and that one's where, Mayor Early said that there was short-term vacation rentals taking place under the radar.
And following that meeting, did you have any discussion with a town official?
I was starting to get a little bit concerned. I mean, we were still proceeding on. And I asked Joey after the meeting, if, I said, y'all not gonna keep us from doing short-term vacation rentals, are you? And he said, if you're gonna build them now.
Is that what you had been working on for?
That's true.
Months
Joey,
and
you know it
years.
is. Yes, you do. You know, so I wouldn't believe you would ever lie.
Have you been? working-
I'm not.
Not gonna get back and forth.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Bottom
I'm just telling
line,
the truth.
bottom line, had you been working on building short-term vacation rentals for months and years and spending money up at that point?
Yes, that's the bottom line.
Okay.
And Joey's not the only one. That use short-term vacation rentals were taking place up here. I mean, it couldn't have been.
That advertisement out on the internet that's in the filings, that we'll present tonight, if it's not already in there, did they have ads back in 2018 with customer reviews up
Yes.
there on the internet?
Yes, and it probably went back before that, but I don't know. We printed that out right after that meeting. And Brian said, well, it's on the internet. He said, you don't need to print it out. I said, well, you might better print that out, put it in the file.
So was there another meeting, or at one of these meetings, did the McDaniels show up?
I wasn't at that meeting either, but I know that McDaniels showed up at the meeting, and I guess y'all have to tell me on that. But the McDaniels showed up at one of the meetings.
And is that the property owner who was advertising short-term vacation rental up on the mountain on the internet?
That's right. They were here. They thought this was all about them.
By March of 2020, did you get concerned and have council contact the city attorney?
Yes.
Okay.
By the way, before you go any further on that, this is a card that they gave my son. My son was at that meeting when McDaniels were there, and Marcia was too. And McDaniels gave my son this card. It's their Wayne McDaniel Associate Broker, Solid Source Realty.
So those folks were doing short-term vacation rental in a residential area prior to the
That's right.
ordinance. Okay. And in March of 2020, you had a letter sent to the town about your vested rights on short-term vacation rental. And did you get a response from the city attorney?
Yes, you called me up on a Sunday afternoon, and you said to me that you'd had a conversation with Mr. Tillery, and that the town was early in the stages of doing short-term vacation rental regulation, and that they were not interested in taking away any of our property rights.
And the letter you got said the town's intent is not to infringe on private property rights.
That's right,
And then did you?
Who is that letter from?
from you. Yes, sir.
And then, when you got your open records request shortly before the vested rights hearing, did you see that various town officials have been working on short-term vacation rental regulations since October 2019?
Well, you mean in open records?
Yes,
I was-
without telling the
I
public review.
was surprised when we got this open records and set, by the way, we got those open records in September 2020, like one day before the hearing that we was gonna have. And the first vested rights hearing, October 1st, I think it's going to, because my birthday is the next day. And we got those and we read through all that. Brian and Marcia read through it. They did a great job and found out there was a lot of letters going around with the town clerk and everything, basically undermining what we had already started the process to do.
And this mayor and council, they weren't involved in driving that short-term vacation rental ordinance. It was other town officials, right?
I don't think I saw anything from, any of them. I mean, Ms. Lapidus, I think, answered, but she was neutral. I felt she's always been neutral in this whole thing. But, primarily, Professor Nelms, it seemed like was a driving force in this thing.
And he was on a town board, correct?
He was on Downtown Development Authority. I think he was chair.
And his wife was also a town official.
She was, I'm not sure if she was a previous council member. I'm not sure if she was at that time. I don't know if the election in 2019, she would have been still on the council.
June of 2020, did you submit another land disturbance permit in furtherance of short-term vacation? rental?
Yes, sir, we did for 11 of the, we actually owned 12, we owned 11 lots. They were all together except for lot number 22. And Johnny and I actually purchased lot 22 after the land disturbance permit in the hopes that we'd make one driveway around all 12 lots. But yes, we did 2 land disturbance permits for those 11 lots.
About 3 weeks before the ordinance was enacted, did you and your brother Johnny get a chance to meet with the mayor?
Yes, we met with Mr. Mayor. He was very cordial when he was open.
And did you lay out the time and money you would spend on short-term vacation?
Well, I
rentals?
didn't lay it all out. I mean, just told him we had a lot of money in it. And it's something that we're deeply vested into. I mean, I didn't use those words, but we were into it deeply. And
Did you mark the lots that you had been working on?
yeah, we showed him design of those, the driveways. It was a survey that we'd handwritten the 2 driveways that showed 4 cuts in those 11 lots. Now, we ended up presenting that too before they passed the ordinance later on. Marcia probably tell you on that, but because we had it all blown up where we could show everybody what how we were planning on, rather than doing 12 separate cuts. By that time, we owned 12 lots there. You know, we bought that other one. Rather than doing 12 separate cuts, we would just do 4 driveways. Well, actually, we hadn't bought that middle lot yet, so it'd be 4 driveways rather than 11 cuts.
The drawing that Marcia presented, was that at the July 9th, 2020 meeting?
I think that date's right.
And Van Knighton, chairman of the zoning board, June 8th, 2020, did he say that the town did not currently have an ordinance in place to adequately regulate this industry, referring to short-term
That
vacation?
was one of the letters he'd written to somebody.
Okay. And then June 9th, 2020, did Professor Nelms, a town official, write that the town charter had no language that forbade short-term rentals?
Yes, sir.
Did he write memos June 10th, June 15th, that had strategy and legal arguments against your project?
I believe he wrote the ordinance.
Did he?
But he had strategy. He put down that he had arrows in the quiver.
How did that?
And that made me feel like a target, that someone was going to try to kill me. Well, I don't think he meant to kill me, but I was a target.
Just your project?
Yeah.
And he didn't do that in an open public meeting, did he?
No, actually, Mr. Nelms, I told him I wasn't out, the very first thing in that July meeting, 2019, I went up to Mr. Nelms afterwards, Professor Nelms, excuse me, I don't mean to be disrespectful. Professor Nelms, and I said, we don't intend to hurt anybody. He said, tell them that.
You mentioned Mary Beth Hughes, who was a town official during a lot of this timeline. In one of your presentations here at the town hall, did she say she has no problem with short-term vacation rental up on the mountain?
When November 2019, she was there in that meeting, and she was one of the 4 people that said that they had no problem, short-term vacation rentals. I think it's in the minutes.
If this vested rights application is granted, are you and your family ready, willing, and able to complete short-term vacation rentals at a high quality in the town?
Yes, sir, we are.
We presented the summary last time, as well as the application that's in front of you. I think it's exhibit 9, 8, 9, 8A and 9, I believe. And this time we give an additional summary, which is exhibit 12. This is a second supplement that has some of these dates have been mentioned, as well as documents. Big one. We're going to backtrack. They're out. Did you and your son work on the second supplement to the mayor and council?
Yes, and primarily my son.
Okay. And does that have a lot of the dates that you mentioned?
Yes, sir.
Not all these are going to have the exhibit label on there, but exhibit 17, this is an additional timeline. More recently, have you gone through the dates? And does exhibit 17 have a lot of those dates and issues you just mentioned?
Yes,
That's the supplemental timeline of events. Exhibit 17. You mentioned the handwritten note and a presentation Marcia Brock made. We'll cover that with her.
that's right.
At the last vested rights hearing, somebody asked about off-street parking on right of way. Have you investigated that issue since 13 months ago?
All street parking on right of ways is allowed.
Have you
Johnny-
seen it here?
You just look out the door. The store, there's a shop right there, and there's apartments down here, all up and down through here that park on the right of way all the time. And up the mountain and everything on the road that Johnny's allowed them to use, they park on the right of way. And but anyway, that being said, we were building a parking lot that's accessible, that does it right as far as parking. But I've got experience in parking on right of way. We have right now we have a lot down in Louisville, Georgia, that's being condemned by the Department of Transportation. And the Department of Transportation is taking part of the land, and then the rest of it they're just doing right of way. And then part of our damages, what they take, they got to pay you what it's worth, and then the right of way, they got to pay you what's called compensatory. Is that what you call it? Damage, consequential damage. Yes, consequential damages, and that's valued separately. And I asked them, well, why is it valued separately? And they said because on the right of way, you can still use it. You can park on it, you just can't build on it. And there's parking. There's DOT parking. There's DOT right away on the restaurant up here.
Downtown Clayton, do they have off-street parking?
No, they got off-street parking all the way up and down streets in Clayton.
And I think I passed on to the city sometime since then. Cartersville and a lot of other small towns in Georgia have that town square.
Yeah, a
parking
lot
where
of
you got-
towns got that. I imagine that Clarksville's
You've got the travel lanes, and then on either side, you've got parking spaces.
That's
and
right.
That's on right of
That's
way.
right.
Is exhibit 15, the Cartersville parking?
Yes, sir. That's what it looks like.
And that's in response to the off-street parking question from last time on right of way.
That's correct.
And you offered to build it and maintain it.
Yes, sir.
As part of the short-term vacation rental.
Right now, it's the dead end, at the dead end of the street.
It's not maintained or improved or anything right now.
No,
Um,
we don't have any buildings on the right of way.
did you calculate revenue based on your experience in short-term vacation rental revenue for the town?
Yes,
Is exhibit 16 that calculation?
that's what it looks like. My son did that too.
Nearly $73,000 a year at a minimum.
That's what we feel like. There's a need here.
And that's in direct funds. That does not account for the money that those visitors would spend in the town or the increase in property values for neighbors.
That's right. We've had two real estate people testify that property values will go up. It does not bring property values down, especially on something that's run right.
Up the mountain, Hickory Nut Mountain Road, those 14 lots, who donated who gave permission for that road to be built?
Johnny and Cheryl Jackson allowed the homeowners to use that road.
Okay. And back in 2014, was there a lot of discussion about that road?
There's a lot of discussion
Maintenance
about
of
that road.
Is that in exhibit 14?
Yes, sir. It talks in there about the owner of that road, lock, stock, and barrel was. Well, you have to just read it.
And that's a majority of the lots are up Hickory Nut Mountain Road on that, which nothing would be there if your brother had not provided that permission.
I don't know, they'd had to go some other way, I guess.
The hearing last time and then the rezoning recently, is there a lot of information in those filings, and the presentations made that bear on your work on these 23 lots?
You mean a lot of the financial data and everything?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. I omitted the exhibits. They're on file with the town. Be glad to make copies of any of those who are of interest, but here is the, here are the transcripts of those two hearings. We'll mark these as 19 of them. No further questions at this time.
And Mr. Mayor, I would note that Exhibit 19's got two transcripts. No problem with the first part of the vested rights hearing. That's the issue that's being presented here tonight. The procedures that I went over earlier, though, specify the question to be decided, and it's not a question that was the scope of the rezoning hearing last month. In other words, there is, in Exhibit 19, there's a transcript from last year and this here.
Right.
There's also the transcript from a month ago on a rezoning application.
Right.
So I would note, and I mean, it's up to you, but I mean, I would note that the rezoning hearing isn't germane to the issue of vested rights. It's not relevant to the question this
Right.
proceeding is for. Is relevant to the proceeding we had last month.
Right. And Mr. Mayor, I'll respond, Clint Irvin's presentation, Brian Irvin's presentation, and a lot of other residents' presentations in that have various facts that do bear upon these 23 lots. So we present it, it's there. It's, it's a town record. We didn't hire the court reporter, the town did. We think it's something that there will be information in there that would be beneficial. Obviously, the October 1st, 2020 hearing about this issue has a lot more in it. But in reading that, there were a lot of things that, I've looked at this now for over a year, and there was a lot of informative information in there as to vested rights.
He can present it as the documents. And as I said in the beginning, there's some flexibility with these procedures. It's not, rules of evidence where you can exclude or not. I mean, you can consider it. It'll be something for the weight, credibility, counsel affords to it on account of it was within the scope of a different proceeding. As far as him making a copy of the exhibit, it's fine.
All right, one more exhibit that I didn't get out yet for this witness. Exhibit 13. This is exhibit 13. These excerpts of that open records request that you got in 2020.
Yes.
The town documents. And on page 11 of exhibit 13, is that where Professor Nelm said that the town charter didn't currently regulate short-term rentals as of 2020? On the bottom of the page, the town charter had no
Yeah.
language that forbade STRs.
That's right.
And he said that in a offline discussion. That's not what was being presented at meetings, was it?
No.
And is there a 5-page memo he did that mentioned you all and gave a bunch of strategic advice and then said, here's an arrow in your quiver?
Yeah.
And that's not the kind of language that he and other town officials were using in the public meetings, was it? And after all the work you've done in Tallulah Falls over the years, going to work at the office, keeping up your office, working on this project for years, how'd that make you feel?
Made me feel good. But I don't hate anybody. Forgive it about the person.
Ask some questions. The way we did this last time was if council has any questions that they'd like to ask, I'm gonna let them go first before I ask mine. All right. First one's more just, I guess, my curiosity than anything, but you had mentioned you have a brother named James.
That's right.
Is he a lawyer?
Yes, sir.
Judge or something?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's in Tacoma.
Yes, sir.
Now, Let me get a little bit of an understanding, if I can, about what the nature of your vested rights claim is. So are you claiming that you have vested rights to develop the townhomes?
I believe we have the right to have the townhomes. We have, if we have vested rights to be with short-term vacation rentals.
So let's talk specifically about the 4 lots there on the lake. When I refer to the 4 lots in the lake, you know what I'm referring to. So in 2019, you had applied for a rezoning of those 4 lots.
That's right.
And that was from R1 to B.
That was ordered to get density. That's correct.
And the proposed development on those lots was an 18 unit town, right?
That's right.
Okay. That development could not be built in an R1 zoning district.
Well, y'all changed the rules. Yeah, that's another thing. That's another thing. There's been a moving goalpost during this whole thing.
Let me just,
There's been let me answer. I didn't change the zoning requirement to make it business to do short-term vacation rental. Town did.
so,
So I have the right to build townhomes, yes.
and I guess I've got right to ask
But
questions.
y'all changed the rules.
In 2019, you applied to rezone, correct?
That's right.
And that's because you needed to rezone it to build the 18-unit town.
That's right.
Okay. So is your claim here today that that you have vested rights to build the 18-unit townhomes?
I believe so, because y'all changed the rules.
Well, the follow-up to that is when you say you have vested rights to build the 18-unit townhomes, if you couldn't build that in an R1 district, then what facts suggest that you have vested rights to that property being rezoned business district?
Y'all changed the rules. I didn't.
I understand your contention is that the town's ordinance precluded short-term vacation rentals in an R1 district. I'm not saying I agree with you in that conclusion, but that's your contention, right?
That's right. Y'all changed the rules.
Okay. So the question is, could you build an 18-unit townhome on an R1 piece of property in 2019?
In 2019, I probably couldn't,
All right.
unless I got it rezoned.
So I don't think I quite heard you, which is probably my fault, but I think what you said is you probably could in 2019 build the townhomes.
I said I probably could not unless it was rezoned
Okay, all right. So
at
that's,
at that time.
all right. So I'm just going to take it piece by piece. In 2019, on just the 4 lots, you couldn't build the 18-unit townhome without getting a rezon.
That's correct.
So then today, do you claim a vested right to those 4 lots being zoned business district?
Y'all changed the rules. That's the way I look at it.
Well, it's not quite my question.
Well, that's my answer.
All right.
And in terms of the form of the question, I would say the targeting that was done at the Urbans in Exhibit 13, I think that opens it up. And I've got a legal position on vested rights. It's Exhibit 11 that I can present. I want to let your questions go without me intervening. But in terms of the legal issues, I'm glad to address that with the mayor and council on the legal. But I think Exhibit 13, the way they were treated behind their back in the town, the mayor and council weren't the ones doing it, but that's wrong. Okay. And I think that opens up broad relief to the Urbans under the circumstances. It's wrong.
Well, you'll have time to talk about the legal issues. What I'm trying to understand is the claim that he has vested rights in a BD zoning, or is the claim that he has rights to operate STVRs in an R1 piece of property?
We are here tonight. We don't want to stay here all night. Our request is that you honor the Urbans' vested rights to short-term vacation rentals and then let the chips fall where they may in the future. But I think read Exhibit 13 and ask, number one, is that okay with you? Number two, how would it be down at the courthouse? And I think that opens the Urbans up to a lot of relief. But we're here today asking the mayor and council to say yes on vested rights, recognizing the time and money the Urbans spent on short-term vacation rentals before the ordinance was enacted. That's all we're asking for.
As zoned R1.
mean, short-term vacation rentals were done in R1 in Tallulah Falls before the ordinance, and this property is R1. I don't think there's any dispute about that.
All right, so we probably will be here all night if the two-word question requires a four-word, four-sentence answer, but that's really what the nature of the question is originally in 2019, sir, you wanted to build an 18-unit townhome on 4 lots. So tonight, it seemed like to me for the first time, you said that you have a vested right in that. Whereas a year ago, when we talked about this, it was related to whether you could put cabins that met the R1 zoning requirements and use those cabins as short-term vacation rentals. So my question is, are you claiming vested rights in developing an 18-unit townhome, or are you questioning, or are you claiming vested rights for using your property for short-term vacation rentals as cabins?
I'm claiming vested rights in the 22 units that we had shown. Four of them were cabins, plus what we could do on the rest of the mountain, up the mountain under R1 that was already there. We could build 2 houses under R1 on every lot we had or more. It's 2.9 per acre per lot. When we had that meeting, they said I'd have to get part of the 5 lots zone commercial too. Well, that part of the other lot was over an acre. And under commercial, on those 2, that'd be over 18 units, 4 on the lake, and then 1 acre on the lake. Those 4 lots on the lake were over an acre. And this septic drain field was over an acre. That's 2 acres. We could have built over 18 units. All we asked for was 18. They were worried about us putting something else there than short-term vacation rental. The remaining 4 cabins, we didn't need to have any zoning.
If the council were to grant your application for vested rights here tonight, would you take that to mean you could build an 18-unit townhome on those 4 lots?
I'm willing to work with the town.
That's not my question.
Well, as I take it, I should be able to do, yes,
Okay.
but I'm willing to work with the town.
Look, Johnny Irvin's still here. We can skip a couple hours. They've authorized me to say, we got 30 days. They're willing to mediate. They're willing to let y'all pass this on to the declaratory judgment. They'll meet anytime, any place, discuss details of this. From the legal standpoint, we're asking for the vested rights to be recognized, $780,000 years. Brian moved from Charleston here. You've got an abundant record before you. They spent a lot of time and money before the ordinance was enacted. The legal details of it, they're glad to, have meetings, mediation, declaratory judgment action in Raven County, whatever on that. They have broad flexibility on that, but they're just asking for their private property rights, their vested rights to be recognized. That's the request.
Okay.
From a legal standpoint, in terms of the details of that, you've heard it from him. He's willing to work with the town, willing to sit down at the time and place. This is kind of the worst way to do that. David, Johnny, Clint, and Brian Irvin, and Marcia, they would be glad to work with the town and working the details out on what it looks like.
You had said that you think it's not going to look real great down at the courthouse about the documents that are contained in some of your exhibits. And I submit to you, it's not going to look real great down at the courthouse if he is responsive to the questions in the same manner that he is tonight. Asking a very simple
I think
question.
when you tell the truth, I don't think you have nothing to hide.
Well, sir, then when the judge asks you, do you believe that you can put an 18-unit townhome on the 4 lots, what is the answer?
Yes, because y'all changed the rules.
And because y'all targeted this project
That's
with
right.
an arrow from a quiver.
We have
Behind
not,
their
we have
back,
not been
outside of
treated
public
right.
meetings. But look, I'm not here, you're prompting us to do that, but I'm gonna let you ask your questions to him, but if it's a legal question, and if you're telling him you don't think he's gonna sound good to the judge, I'm gonna have to respond in like kind on that, okay?
Yeah, I responded
why
in
don't
like,
you-
no, hold on just a
Yeah.
minute. I responded in like
You know-
kind to you, the same way that you did to my clients. You're not talking to me. So, but I was talking to you. But rather than us having the back and forth here, really is a simple question of, a year ago, what we were talking about is a vested right to develop STVRs consistent with with the R1 single family residential zoning classification. Now tonight, suddenly, for the first time, it seems like he's suggesting he's got a vested right to develop an 18-unit townhome on the 4 lots. So that is my only question. I'm
That's-
asking
yeah,
that
that's-
question.
That's
simply-
not a question, that's an argument.
No, no,
But I think the
understand. I'm
mayor and
making that to
council,
you.
the mayor and council can review the October 2020 hearing and see that we talked about the 18-unit townhome unit at length. Okay, without objection, you got to cross-examine Ronnie Davidson, James Irvin, the realtors, Brian Irvin, David Irvin for part of it. They talked about that at length. All right, okay. The
I'm just
townhomes.
gonna ask, we'll ask this question one more time. He'll answer however. he wants to. All right, I'm done with this. There'll be time for that. So, Mr. Irvin, are you asking the mayor and council to recognize a vested right in developing an 18-unit townhome on the 4 lots?
Yes, but I'm willing to work with the town.
All right, now you said that the amount of money that you've spent now greatly exceeds the
Let-
amount of
let
money.
me
Can I
let me-
finish my question?
Let me finish the other question.
You're done.
No, I'm not
Well,
done.
I'll let you answer my question, and you can explain it entirely. But I am entitled to ask you the question.
Let me finish the previous question. Yes, I'm asking for that, but I'm also asking for vested rights on the remainder of my lots under R1 that we already had.
And what are you looking to build on those remaining lots?
Plan on building cabins.
That Lonnie Davidson's drawing out.
Well, I didn't ask you a question.
But I'm willing to work with the town.
Okay, David, do you feel like you've answered?
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right, now you said that the amount of money you've spent now on the 24 lots is more than it was in the initial filings in
That's correct.
2020. All right, so let me understand that. So you've continued to spend money on developing STVRs despite the ordinance.
But ordinance that prohibit me from building short-term vacate, or the ordinance, or since the ordinance. Now, the moratorium did prohibit. And yes, we've kept developing our property like we'd planned on doing because we were forced into, the town kept moving the goalpost. The town tried to stop us from building steps down to the lake. We had provided everything there. The town tried to do an ordinance, a tree ordinance to keep us from cutting any trees. We had to move faster than we originally wanted to move.
I don't recall mayor and council considering a tree ordinance in my recollection.
It was in planning and zoning.
My recollection on the steps were that you did not obtain a building permit first.
We obtained everything anybody else had obtained.
And you ultimately obtained a building permit for the steps.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, now, you said that Brian had checked on STDRs and found some on the internet in residential areas.
That's right.
All right, and I think you said that the printout is in the materials, but did that printout include the address?
Mr. McDaniel's property is one of them.
All right, and Mr. McDaniel is the one whose business card you held up?
That's right.
All right, and if you could let me take a look at that for a minute. All right, and that says associate broker on his card.
I guess so.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Does it require someone to be a licensed broker to operate a short-term vacation rental?
Anybody can operate a short-term vacation rental. Resident can.
Sure. They don't have to be a licensed real estate broker.
No,
Now, in R1 zoning districts, there are conditional uses. Right.
I suppose so.
Do you know whether Mr. McDaniel, do you know what he was operating out of the property you're referring to?
No, he's operating short-term vacation rental.
Do you know if that was the short-term vacation rental or whether that was where he ran his business to operate other short-term vacation rentals?
I don't believe so. It showed pictures. It said you, in the printout, it showed pictures of the Tallulah Falls dock, and it said you can use this dock.
Okay. When was the last time you checked to see if there were short-term vacation rentals being advertised in Ormond?
I haven't been looking lately.
Okay. Now, earlier you told me that there was his name's John Harkness. That's the real estate.
Jerry.
Jerry Harkness. Okay, he's the real estate agent.
Yes, sir.
Now, I thought you told me he testified at one of the hearings. Was that the one a month ago? Or was that the one?
I can't remember which one he testified.
But he submitted a letter.
It wasn't a month ago. It was a year ago.
But yeah, he submitted a letter.
That's right.
All right, and then James Franklin, when you said he testified, you meant it the one a month ago. Maybe the Planning and Zoning Commission 2 months
You
ago.
mean Truett Franklin?
Truett Franklin, sorry. Got my name. Truett Franklin, though, his testimony was in connection with the rezoning request.
That's right.
And that wasn't on short-term vacation rentals for cabins, right?
Truett's for that too.
But he didn't testify in the proceeding related to that.
Well, yes, he did. I mean, he was saying that we needed places to rent in the town.
But
I
that
can
was
bring him back.
up to you, Mr. Reeves. And when you say he's for that, you mean he's for short-term vacation?
Yes.
Okay. All right, now and you went through, and I'm not sure I wrote them all down exactly right, but March of 2019 and May of 2019, talked about some grading permits that were obtained.
Correct.
All right. And those grading permits, those were just they didn't specify a short-term vacation use, right?
Said that we were doing engineering and everything for development.
And in fact, shortly after that, you applied for the first reason.
That's right.
And I think what you told me last time was that you were doing the grading so that you could see what you might have.
We were seeing where we could build and everything.
But you recall telling me that.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's written right on the permit. We were doing engineering and everything. Soil test.
All right, so then in July of 2019, you meet with Ms. Lapperhouse to discuss STVRs. That conversation was related also to the application for rezoning that same year.
We actually met with her, I think, in June, to get the application.
All right, and that's just for the 4 lots.
That's right.
All right, and then the conversation with Mayor Dobbs about where you said she told you the townhomes would look real beautiful on the 5 lots.
That's right.
You had withdrawn the zoning application by that.
No,
Okay, when was that conversation?
it was the night of the public hearing and, or the planning and zoning meeting.
Okay. All right, and then with what I'm gonna call the future land use map, comprehensive plan, that document shows that area, 5 lots and 4 lots. That area is village residential, right? And that, what you told the mayor and council was that that would allow shops and stuff.
That's my understanding.
Okay. Now, shops and that type of commercial development, you're not saying that that's allowed in R1, right?
It's allowed in village residential.
Sure.
It's part of the comprehensive land use plan.
Right. That's not the zoning. Right?
No,
All right. So let me get back to the questions that we were kind of going through a year ago. I'm gonna read this off to you. Because what ensued was a lot of back and forth, and then I think your brother came up with what was probably the best idea of the night, which was to continue it, because I think at that point it was midnight, and
it's late.
I think we were all a little bit testy. So,
It's bedtime, say,
yeah. So with that, I mean, what we were gearing up to do was to come back to a question that Mr. Reeves and I disagreed with over what had been asked, but I'm going to read it out of the transcript, and it's next to his name. He says, the words of multiple city officials is it's unregulated now. It is legal and unregulated right now. And so you said, very well, I'll pursue my rights. And so the next part of this, and this is on page 181, it's lines 17 through 22. of the
now what do
transcript.
you, this is transcript of our October 1st.
It
That's
is.
right here.
It
Okay.
is. So I said, okay, let me ask him that question.
Hang on, what page are you on?
Sure, it is 181. Yeah, you can have mine.
You said 181.
And it's the second highlighted part. First highlighted part is related. But the question was, not have it in front of me anymore, to engage in mind, but the question was, accompanied by words and acts of city officials that said STVRs are legal right now. You see that?
Conversation with city officials and that everyone was supportive of the idea, and I'm asking for is specifics. That's your question?
No, it's the second highlighted part there, and it's next to Mr. Reeves' name.
And support, he just made that abundantly clear. The words of multiple city officials is, it's unregulated right now.
All right, can I see that, please, folks? So that is the question that sort of never got answered entirely, or we didn't get to the conclusion of it last time, was what words of multiple city officials were that it's unregulated right now. And so
It's in the discovery documents.
and so I'll represent to you what you said tonight was generally consistent with what you told me a year ago. You had, and we'll relay this back to you, but I mean, you feel free to tell me if this is incorrect, but the first conversation was with Mary Beth Hughes. You didn't tell her at that time that you were doing short-term vacation rentals. You said you were going to have guests. And that was a short conversation.
That's right.
And she didn't really indicate support or opposition at the time.
She had no problem with it. She just wanted the privacy fence.
You didn't have plans that you were showing her at that point, right?
She knew I wasn't going to live there.
But she didn't have the drawings.
No, there wasn't any drawings. No,
That's the only conversation you had with her.
that's correct.
Okay. And in fact, when you submitted the rezoning application later that same year, she was opposed to the rezoning, right?
I think she didn't want townhomes next door to us, but she didn't mind short-term vacation rentals up the mountain. That's quite evident in what took place.
Well, did she tell you that?
She said it right in the minutes in November
Did she?
2019.
All right, so in November of 2019, in the minute, she told you she was fine with short-term vacation rentals up the mountain.
She fine with short-term vacation rentals.
Didn't clarify whether that was on those lines.
It's pretty evident that what everybody was talking about. We were the conversation.
Now, from the minutes there, was that a conversation with you and her, or was this in a public meeting?
Public meeting.
But other than the one conversation you hadn't had about that issue.
No,
And then the next person that you had told me you had talked to was former Mayor Terry Dobbs. This was a comment she made after the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And that was related to the research, right? She's got to take it back.
Oh, yes,
Okay, and then the next person that you had mentioned was the current mayor, Mike Early.
that's right.
And his comment was, if it's being done, it's being done under the radar.
That's right.
All right. And then the other was Joey County.
That's right.
And that's after the first rezoning. But during the first half of 2020, while the STVR ordinance is being considered.
Yeah, it's after rezone,
Right. So,
that we withdrew.
right, and you withdrew that rezoning after the moratorium went into effect. Right.
Same day as, we didn't know the moratorium was there until a month later.
The moratorium was in July.
I have to look back and see, but it's, I do remember we threw it through the same day they passed the moratorium. We withdrew in order to answer all the questions where we could go ahead and proceed that year
Yes.
and not wait another year.
August 8th, 2019. Both events took place.
But there was I see it now, it's in Exhibit 9 at the bottom. There was a motion made in July to have my firm research putting an ordinance in place on this team.
Yeah, I can't remember if I was at that.
Okay.
I don't believe I was.
All right, so getting back to that question that I had you read then, there on page 181, other than the folks that we've just talked about, Mary Beth, Terry Dobbs, Mike Early, and Joey Fountain, are there other city officials that had specific conversations with you in support of developing the lots for STVO?
There were STVRs in the community. I would think that people would know about it.
So that's a no. There's specific conversations with you.
I'd have to look back and see.
All right, and what would you have to look back to see?
I talked to anybody else.
All right, and what document do you have here tonight that would help you refresh that recollection?
I'd have to look at the timeline, I guess.
All right, and is that timeline? Exhibit 9?
Well, it'd be, we had a supplemental and then the original too.
Exhibits 12 and 17.
Supplemental too. This is supplemental. They have original timeline too.
I think 9 is the original. That was the one that was I'll represent to you, that's the one that was handed out at the October 1st, 2020. But all I'm trying to get at here is,
Well, we talked to Linda Lapidus many times about it.
could I,
Because she's the administrator.
sure. So the last part of my question is, what city officials had specific conversations with you in support of you developing the properties for STVs?
Wasn't anybody that said they worked for it until January 2020. That was Barbara Rice.
So I think that means the answer to my question is that nobody specifically encouraged you to develop properties for STVRs who was a town official. Is that right?
In the minutes of November 2019, there evidently was 4 different officials that were for it.
There's, and so is your testimony that the minutes from that date reflect them encouraging you specifically?
Oh, of course.
All right. And what date was that?
November 2019. No, November the 13th, 2019, Teresa Dyer, Mary Beth Hughes, Mike Early, and Van Knight.
And that's an exhibit 9.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Just to move us along, I think Marcia's got a much more detailed recollection of that exchange.
She came back, and talked to me about it.
Well, how about
Well, that's good.
we'll ask her.
That'd be good.
But my question is not in the context of the public meeting. It's just simply this: did anybody from the town encourage you to develop properties for STV?
When we did the original zoning application, it was well received by the mayor at that time. I remember right, she checked to see if the water system would handle the 18 units.
Right. So that conversation with her then was related to the townhome.
So that wasn't a conversation there. That was something we discovered in Discovery.
All right, and then I think you'd said that in the public meeting context, unconnected to a specific STVR, you had then Commissioner Mike Hurley, Commissioner Knudsen, and Commissioner Langston supporting STVRs in general, right?
That's right.
Those comments weren't related to specific pieces of property, right?
I took it as it was related to us. We were the topic that people were discussing. We were the one that people were talking about. That's pretty obvious.
Okay, so were those comments directed toward any specific properties that you?
I would took it as it was directed at all of them. That we had applied for and that we had under development.
Now, in between, this is just a side note, but in between October last year and tonight, I think it was about 2 months ago, you have sold lot number 4, correct?
That's right.
All right, so lot number 4 is no longer something the
Yes,
council
it's no longer there.
doesn't need to make a decision.
No, they don't need to make a decision on that.
22 lots.
20.
We were at 23, right? We were at 24. All right. 23 is right. All right.
I give you a pass, lawyers are terrible at that. But my point is solely just lot 4 is out. Okay. All right, now, let me ask you about these documents here related to parking in the right of way, specifically number 15, that's parking in Cartersville. All right, now, is there an ordinance that allows that on Tallulah Falls streets? Or properties that are within Tallulah Falls?
There's parking all over the right of way in Toulouse Falls.
Not really my question.
Well, I think that answers it.
So I think what you said on questions, from Mr. Reeves, was that you now looked into it and that parking is allowed in the right of way. So what does that mean you've looked into?
I've looked into legalities of different places. I've personally experienced parking in right of way.
Sure.
There's parking in right of way right now in Toulouse Falls.
Okay, so you said a lot in that 2-sentence answer to the short question. You said that you looked into the legality of it. And so is there something specific related to the legality of it in Toulouse Falls?
I have no idea
All right,
if there's something in your ordinance that addresses that or not.
okay. And the other properties that you're referring to where you said there's off-street parking, are those properties zoned R1?
I'm sorry, repeat the question, please.
So you separate and apart from looking into the legality of it, you said that parking in the right of way to the falls. So my question is, are any of the properties that are being used for that is R1 property?
Oh, I'm sure there is. Yes, there is. I know it's some.
And is that the primary means of parking for those structures, or is it just people parking on the side of the road?
Well, there's homeowners that park right in front of their home on the right of way.
And is that an established
Or
road?
it's not established road. It's a allowed to use road.
That would be known as Hickory Neck Mountain
Mhm.
Road. And it's paved surface.
And there's parking right, probably for this meeting right here, there's probably parking on the right of way out here.
Sure, that's paved street, right?
There might be some of them parked on the grass. I've seen it before.
No, I know, but the right of way has paving, right?
Not all right of way has paving.
You know, the right of way right out here.
I don't know.
So,
that.
so if you and I get out, and walk out the door and walk up to 441, it's gonna be dirt.
Yes. There's dirt in front of a lot of the shops. It's up through there.
All right, now on these calculations here that are exhibit 16. That is the projected estimated revenue of hotel motel tax from development.
Correct.
All right, and that is how many of the lots?
22 units.
All right, and that is the number of units that would be on the 4 lots and 5 lots. If you built the plan, you would submit
That's
them
right.
in the rezoning.
Part of it wasn't submitted for rezoning. Part of it was already for the cabins. We don't need rezoning for.
But my point is that exhibit 16 is based upon
22 units.
the town. So
Townhomes plus the 4 cabins.
now, I think you had referenced a condemnation action that you have going on somewhere else,
What action?
eminent domain.
Yes.
And so DOT had told you that you can park on right of way.
That's, the DOT allows parking on right of way right here in town.
Within the permanent easement that adjoins the right of way. or-
Correct.
And so on the property you're referring to, just so that they're clear, 'cause I can tell you the 3 people at this table know condemnation probably better than the rest, but when you're saying they can park in the right of way, what you're really meaning is a permanent easement that adjoins the right of way.
I don't know if it's permanent easement or not. I just know it's DOT right of way.
All right, let me show you 13, I think this is page 11. And down here at the bottom, this is Elm's email where he says, what does seem to be
The town charter has no language that forbids short-term rentals.
sure, and he indicates in there that he's not aware.
He indicates in there what?
That he's not aware.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I saw that in there or not.
Okay. So let me get into the expenses a little bit with you here. This is going to be something that you the exhibits. It's investment. Already been marked exhibit number 8. That's the list of expenditures that you gave at the last STVR here.
Correct.
Okay. Now, it says time for you, for Brian, for Marcia, per internal accounting records. Time over what time frame?
Time up to this point. It's been,
And is that divided out by hours related solely with this project?
it's divided out by what we estimated our time to be. We went conservative.
All right, how did you come up with that figure?
We took our pay and multiplied it times conservative percentage of time we spent on it.
All right. And do you have a rough idea of the number of hours?
No, I have to look back. So it's an extensive number of hours. Not counting overtime.
So then. Overtime, meaning just for your hourly. employees.
No, I work more than 40 hours a week.
You pay yourself overtime,
No,
Brian receive overtime.
no.
Now, there's about the 5th line down, it says Brian Urban Computer and Accessories, $2,600.
Yes,
All right, now that computer can be used for purposes other than this project, correct?
it's pretty much used for this.
Does he do work separate and apart from,
We have computers in the office that he does other work on.
so multiple computers?
We got many computers.
Okay. But what you're saying is you bought one specifically for this?
Yes,
Has he used it in the?
I don't know.
Now, car and travel expenses there for you and for Marcia. Are those based on IRS mileage?
We turn in actual expense.
Okay. And how do you determine that?
Turn in what we spend on gas and everything. Turn it in. And I'm sure this was based on the same percentage. I'd have to ask him on that, but I'm sure it's based on the same percentage we use salaries and wages.
Right. Now, they told,
Everything's conservative.
at least Brian told me that I'd have to ask you about the expenses.
Well, we did this a long time ago. I'll have to look back exactly the percentages to see what they were.
Okay.
But I guarantee you it's understated.
Well, I'm just asking if that's calculated based on, the mileage rate the IRS has. or
No,
something.
it's actual cost.
Okay. Now, for the company vehicle, What is that?
That would be Brian's car.
All right. Does he drive it for purposes other than
He's
developing?
he pretty much uses it business only.
And that would include all business.
His job's been pretty much this.
Okay. All right, and then the surveying and legal fees there, that's all related to these 24 lots.
Yeah, that's all that is.
Reeves Hardware Supplies, what? Is that a one-time fee or is that added up?
I have no idea. I have to look at the invoices, but everything there is related to these projects.
Now, there's some legal fees that are kind of scratched out in that document. Is that because they're not applicable to developing those properties as STVRs?
I don't know for sure, but I'd imagine that's the reason they were scratched out.
Okay.
I scrutinized that to make sure we didn't include anything that wasn't.
I don't have any other questions.
All right, I would like to suggest, let's take a little break on Drive City. I know that Johnny's having to get up and around a lot too, so let's take about a 5-10 minute recess. Yes. All right. Everybody ready?
Ready.
Okay. Make sure. All right.
A couple of follow-ups. Exhibit 9, you got asked McDaniel on the short-term vacation rental. Exhibit 9, page 38. Exhibit 9, page 38. It has Exhibit Q up at the top, page 38 at the bottom. Is that the 2020 printout that you and Brian found in McDaniel short-term vacation rental in a residential area of the town?
Yes. Yes,
And was that for that house up on Hickory Nut Mountain, customer reviews for that house?
yes,
And they came to one of the meetings because they thought that some of this was about them. And then in the city's open records response in 2020, there was also city records of the McDaniels doing short-term vacation rental in R1, right?
yes,
And Jerry Hartnett, there was a question about whether he testified at the hearing 13 months ago. Jerry Hartnett did testify at the hearing 13 months ago, right?
yes,
And he talked about the positive impact that short-term vacation rentals have on other homes in the areas where they're located, right?
yes,
They increase property values.
yes,
And he's gone around telling people that in his community and around Northeast Georgia, and doing business with short-term vacation rentals, right?
I imagine so. I'm not with him, so, but yes,
And both he and then Claudia Lyle, they came as realtors talking about short-term vacation rentals, right?
yes,
And since that time, he got elected mayor of Denver.
yes,
And you mentioned Discovery a couple of times. Is that the open records response the city did in 2020?
yes,
I think we mentioned it previously that we cite those, they're city records. We've given some excerpts of them, but there are more records. The records we've given you copies of tonight are kind of tip of the iceberg, but there are other records on file. There were some questions about right-of-way and off-street parking and pavement. Have you offered to pave the right-of-way and the parking and then maintain it as part of the development?
yes,
All right. And then there were some questions about your legal position. I think that'd be a good time. You filed the application that the mayor and council have. Did a presentation 13 months ago. You've done a presentation tonight. And it's Exhibit 11, a letter that you had me prepare a year ago that we didn't get handed out last year, a legal letter.
yes.
All right, no further questions.
I just have a follow-ups there with, with regard to the parking in the right of way. Would you need that if you were developing cabins on the 4 lots as opposed to the 18-unit townhome?
Parking on the right of way if we built cabins on the 4 lots.
Right.
I really don't know. Just have to see. Because it'd be changing the whole project.
All right, so when you say changing the whole project, at any point in time, did you have an intent to develop 4 lots as cabins?
We planned on developing the 4 lots as townhomes and then everything up the mountain as homes.
Now, when you had this conversation with Councilman, did you show him specific plans or the house drawings?
That was all available. He's on council, so.
So that conversation took place in
Those, the town had those since July. July the 9th, is that when it was, 2019, something like that, whenever we applied.
for the rezoning, you mean?
Yes,
Okay. So the question I've got then is, did you point out to him specific properties where you were going to build STBRs?
I imagine he was aware of it. He yelled at our grader one time when he was grading up the mountain.
What was the grader doing?
He was grading on the 11 lots.
All right, and I imagine he wasn't yelling,
He was just asking them to move.
okay. Did you ever point out to Mr. Fountain where you were planning to put STBRs?
We cut the trees on every lot for pads. It was very evident where they all were planted.
All right, and the comment that he made to you was in regard to the development project we submitted plans for.
No, I asked him, I said, you're not going to keep us from doing short-term vacation rentals, are you?
On the 9 lots that you were applying to develop.
No, it'd be everything.
So that's, I guess that's the question. So you're not planning on preventing us from doing short-term vacation rentals. At that point, had you pointed out to him specifically that you were going to do the development on the lots up Hickory?
Like I said, it was evident because we were already grading. Not at that time, not when we talked then. We weren't grading at that time. That's true.
So that,
Yeah.
that's the question. that I guess
We didn't grade until, that was in February 2020. We didn't grade until we started clearing in June of 2020.
And the conversation with Councilman Fountain was before that.
That's correct.
I don't have any further questions.
Just to get the math right, 23 lots, 4 lots are the ones on the lake that you have a townhome proposal. The
That's
other
right.
19 lots were cabins on
That's
those
right.
19 lots.
That's right.
And of those 19 lots with cabins, only 5 of those lots were ever included in any rezoning. So 14 lots never were in any rezoning.
They didn't require rezoning.
Right. Those 5 lots, the discussions with the city led you to add those to the rezoning. Or to withdraw the zoning and add them later because of density, right?
No, the 5 lots was added because of these, the drain field.
For septic.
That's right.
And in order to get the 18 townhomes.
That's right.
You needed to have septic. You
And-
got
and-
that from
and
one of the 5 lots.
That's right.
Okay. So 14 of the 23 lots never were in any rezoning.
That's correct.
And 5 of the 9 lots that were in a rezoning still showed either residential cabins or septic drain field.
Four of them.
Did you ever give any city official drawings of plans, structures on the 14 lots?
Yes.
All right. What drawings did you give them?
We gave them the cabins.
And
Cabin drawings.
that was the drawings that were part of the rezoning application.
I don't think the rezoning application had the cabins. We gave that to them.
All right. But at any rate, these are the house plans that were drawn by Ronnie Davidson.
Right, some of them were small cabins, some of them were large.
So then, how would a city official know where you were going to build those cabins?
It was obvious that they knew what land we owned.
I don't know, because in the rezoning hearing we had a few weeks, months or so back, you said that you don't own as much as people think you own. So, I mean, do you think people accurately understand what properties you own and don't own?
Well, I know that Professor Nelms showed everybody what we owned.
So I guess that comes back to my original question, which is, did you submit those plans to Councilman Fountain related to the 14 lots? We had that conversation.
What y'all had at that point in time was the 22 units.
This would have been,
It was in February 2020, so we joined that all.
and so your testimony then is at that time, he was aware it was 22 units, not 9.
I really don't know what Joey's aware of. He should have.
I don't have any further questions.
Those land disturbance permits, and grading permits that I asked you about earlier, and you told the mayor and council about in 2019 and 20 prior to the ordinance, those were on those 14 lots up Hickory
That's
Nut Mountain,
correct.
right?
That's right. Before the ordinance was passed, they knew about all the lots.
But we'll cover it through Marcia, but in addition to the plan she submitted at a public meeting, y'all had spelled out all your lots.
That's
In
right.
addition to the permits by a meeting.
That's right.
No further questions for Mr. Irvin.
I don't have any more.
All right. Our next witness is Marcia Brock. I think our last witness.
Chair. Yeah.
You solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're about to give on the issue pending before the council will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
All right, Ms. Brock, if you'll introduce yourself to the mayor and council and tell them how long you've been working here in Florida Falls.
My name is Marcia Brown Brock, and I've been working in Tallulah Falls for 25 years. I'm not a resident of Tallulah Falls, but I only live 15 minutes away from here. And I remember coming to Tallulah Falls as a kid. David had mentioned the Walnut Walk. I was in attendance. I remember people coming from near and far. I remember the Stuckies across the road. It used to be here many years ago. Used to go there and buy souvenirs. Everybody remembers what souvenirs were. And Bradley Brown, who was mayor here for quite some time, very closely related to Bradley Brown. I'm sure Larry remembers him. I'm sure Mary Beth remembers him. God rest his soul. So, but I've been with Johnny and David since 1985 in various aspects of the business and in the hospitality industry, not only with restaurants, but as well as short-term vacation rentals. And it's our hope to expand on short-term vacation rentals in Raven County And also to be permitted to bring short-term vacation rentals to Tallulah Falls. There is a lodging need in Tallulah Falls. As you all know, there are many people that visit the area on the weekends, and when the water releases twice a year, it's a very, very popular destination. So, I'm not an outsider. I've lived in this area for 58 years. And we care what happens to Tallulah Falls. We're not out to destroy the integrity of anything here in the town or the integrity of anyone else's property. But we also stand firm on being able to do what's right and not have our property rights taken away from us.
Marcia, when did you start working on short-term vacation rentals on these 23 lots that we've been talking about?
That would have been early 2019.
Okay. And what did you do on these 23 lots prior to when the ordinance was enacted in late July 2020?
Did various things, completed land disturbance permits with the clerk, Linda, and also submitted some building permits with her. I was also in charge of handling the grading that occurred on the mountain and on the lake lots with cutting the driveways and doing the building pads, and also had an active role in having the trees and the brush taken out.
And since this short-term vacation rental's been up, there've been camping ordinances and deck and fence and structure ordinances and various things that have come up. Did you get questions about what are the ordinance building on these lots as you were turning in permits? Was that something that was inquired about and had occasion to explain short-term vacation rentals?
Yes.
And were you forthcoming and freely would tell everybody short-term vacation rentals when they ask questions about these developments?
Yes.
And David Urban mentioned several land disturbance permits in 2019 and 20 before the ordinance. Were those on both the lots up Hickory Nut Mountain and the ones by the lake?
Yes.
All 23.
Yes.
And we heard earlier, and we heard 13 months ago about Brian Urban moving back to Georgia from Charleston. Before he moved back to Georgia from Charleston in January of 2020, what did you and he work on in the way of software and other things that incurred expenses for these 23 lots to have short-term vacation rentals?
Brian and I were looking for a software provider, vacation rental software company that could handle more than just a few rental units. We have our own little website, standalone website for the properties that we were currently using for short-term vacation rental up in the northern part of Logan County. But Brian and I saw that we were going to need something more robust, something that could handle a lot more units. So we began working and looking, and we found one, and decided to go with this particular vendor. So we did a lot of training on it. Both Brian and I, as well as another lady that works for us in marketing and operations for the SDVRs that we currently do. And the training process for the new software provider, we actually completed that before Brian came to work for us, which Brian came to work for us in January of 2020.
Okay. When Brian Urban came back to Georgia from Charleston to work on these 23 lots being short-term vacation rentals, had the town even published a draft of a short-term vacation rental ordinance at that time? And did you attend town meetings and monitor them and discuss short-term vacation rentals with people as it came up.
Yes.
And at any of those meetings, they say that short-term vacation rentals are illegal in residential areas.
No.
What was the discussion in 2019 about short-term vacation rentals in the town?
There was a lot of discussion among residents and as well as members of some of the committees and council members that they were not necessarily against short-term vacation rentals.
And was the discussion more on imposing regulations and collecting revenue?
Yes. Also been prohibited.
In 2019, there wasn't any discussion about prohibiting or banning.
None.
And was there a meeting in November of 2019 that you attended where short-term vacation rentals were discussed?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Actually, I remember two meetings that we attended in November. One was a planning and zoning and one was a council meeting. And I do remember at the planning and zoning meeting in November of 2019, where, as we had discussed in David's testimony earlier, that there were several people that were not necessarily opposed to short-term vacation rentals being in Tallulah Falls. And we remember those folks as being, I remember those folks as being Van Knighton and Meredith Hughes and possibly Mr. Knudsen, Tressa Dyer, and Barbara Rice did comment that she wasn't sure if she was for it or against it, but I think her comments were that she felt like she was probably not going to be for it. And also after planning and zoning meeting, and this was when Mayor Early was actually mayor-elect. He came up to me after the meeting and we had a really nice conversation. And he was inquiring about how we do short-term vacation rentals that we do in the northern part of the county. And asked, would I mind maybe bringing some of our personnel and actually doing possibly a presentation at one of the council meetings to kind of educate people on how it works. And maybe try to get some more interest in short-term vacation rental. And he indicated that he may have some property that he may be interested in doing.
That was in 2019.
That's in 2019.
When did things get publicly hostile? We now know in 2019 there was stuff going on that we didn't learn about until later. But when did things get publicly hostile concerning short-term vacation rentals?
It kind of started in January of 2020. The heat really got turned up in the summer of 2020, June, July.
Okay.
When the ordinance was shut.
When did things change? Who was the one who sort of started being publicly hostile to short-term vacation rentals at town meetings?
The turning point to me was in January, the planning and zoning meeting, January of 2020, when a motion was made by Mr. Knighton, who was the chair, planning and zoning, and seconded by Keith Knudsen to allow short-term vacation rental in R1. And Barbara Rice spoke up against it. And at that point was when they amended their recommendation for it to be excluded in R1.
Before 2020, had that ever been discussed
No, we had not
publicly?
publicly, yes, that we know
And in Exhibit 13, we now know that some people were working behind the scenes against short-term vacation rentals in R1, Professor Nelms and others. Are they here tonight?
Yes, they are.
All right. Start to finish on this. All right. The driveway in 2019, 2020, were there permits that Urban submitted about a driveway up near the 14 lots up on the mountain?
Yes,
And were questions asked about what are y'all doing on the driveway, 14 lots up the mountain at that time?
yes,
And that was before the ordinance was enacted.
yes.
The steps down to the lake, and I know that happened after the ordinance. Did y'all plan that before the ordinance was enacted?
Yes, we did.
And do other property owners in the town have steps down to the lake?
Yes,
Did you do a presentation in July of 2020?
yes, I did.
I'm going to hand you Exhibit 18. Is Exhibit 18, the second page of Exhibit 18, is that your, is that a map that you presented in that presentation in July of 2020?
Yes, that's correct.
And tell us what that map showed and how you presented it.
And this was an old plat, prior to us having it resurveyed. And we were using this to illustrate our driveways. These are the lots that are up here in that mountain. And we were trying to be as least invasive as possible, not having to do so many driveway cuts. And so we were trying to do 4 cuts on Internet Mountain Road. And that's what this drawing illustrates.
And did you explain that to town officials prior to when the ordinance was enacted?
Yes,
And the first page are those minutes from that meeting. Or what's the first page of Exhibit 18?
that appears to be the minutes.
Okay. And that shows the presentation that you made
Yes.
before the ordinance was enacted.
Mhm.
And what is after the map on page 3 and following?
Our land disturbance permit for the grading on those lots.
On the 14 lots up the mountain?
Yes,
And I won't, I'll ask you, don't go into too much depth because this may have been covered previously, but just tell the mayor and council the level of diligence that you and the Urbans put into maintaining and having high standards at your short-term vacation rentals in Raven County and nearby areas.
we have short-term vacation rentals not only in the northern part of Raven County, but also in western North Carolina. And we have very high standards. We have been listed with Airbnb as a superhost. And those superhost ratings are very hard to get. You basically have to have 4.8 out of 5-star rating to be a superhost. And we have 8 units that are on the property in northern Raven County. And Ann Urban, the cabins that she has here on the lake, we consider Ann part of our organization as well. Hers are superhost rated with Airbnb. We also list on Vrbo, and we also list on Humble Lake.
discussions with town officials, that's something that the town's attorney was asking about. We've heard about the questions about the permits. Hey, what are y'all doing there? And you mentioned, said we're doing short-term vacation rentals. Mayor Dobbs, when she was mayor, do you recall anything she said about short-term vacation rentals?
I never had any direct discussion with Mayor Dobbs, while she was mayor on short-term vacation rentals. I do remember, some of the meetings that I attended while she was mayor. Her asking, for feedback and asking us, questions, trying to, get a better picture of what we were, proposing to do.
And you were telling her you're doing short-term vacation rentals.
Yes,
And no time did she nor anybody else from the town say you can't do short-term vacation rentals in R1, that's illegal.
no, they did not.
And Van Knighton and the other planning board members, other than Barbara Rice, prior to 2020, they were discussing regulating and getting revenue from short-term vacation rentals.
That is correct. Never was it mentioned that we were going to prohibit them.
Or that it was already illegal.
Correct.
And in fact, we've now seen documents where they said, we're doing this moratorium, we're doing this ordinance, because there's nothing to stop it right now legally.
Right. That's correct.
But they didn't say that at meetings. That's something we've now seen behind closed doors. They were saying, generating revenue. Did you hear multiple city officials say they wanted to start generating revenue from short-term
Yes.
vacation rentals?
Yes.
Some of them in this room.
Yes.
Was there a discussion about having licensing, and if you have multiple properties, putting it under one license to, have high stakes, so you'll maintain all the properties diligently?
Yes.
And again, that was before the ordinance was enacted.
Right. That's correct.
The $780,000 of expenses presented a year ago, 13 months ago, did you help gather those records?
Yes, I did.
And tell the mayor and council, just give them a sense of the magnitude of the level of blood, sweat, and tears, the work that you, Brian Irvin, Clint Irvin, Johnny Irvin, David Irvin spent on time and money with short-term vacation rentals on these 23 lots.
Since we began this project, in 2019, most of our efforts have been, every day, working on getting information, working on taking good notes. As every one of you sitting here tonight know that we attend just about every meeting, whether it be Zoom or whether it be in person, all of the P and Zs, any work sessions, any public hearing, all the council meetings, that in 2 years' time is, between the three of us, that's a lot of our time. And we have spent many hours talking with you and your staff and another attorney on this matter, Mr. Adams. I believe some of you remember Mr. Adams coming to some of the proceedings that we did, and compiling all of the costs that was a lot of work, and we had to involve some of our other staff members in it. And so it was our intention to, within a couple of years, which 2 years has already passed, we should already be built and having short-term vacation rentals and revenue coming into us and coming into the town. But instead, we're spinning our wheels and we're having to do battle And that's where a lot of our time and all of our resources have gone the past 2 years.
When the town short-term vacation rental ordinance was enacted, had you already spent time and money in furtherance of short-term vacation rentals on these 23 lots?
Oh, absolutely.
Is that reflected in the timelines and the receipts and the application and supplements that you presented to the mayor and council?
Yes.
And tell them about the level of diligence that you have on caring about good quality work on short-term vacation rentals that you put in these 23 lots.
Yeah, we take, no matter what we do, if it's short-term vacation rentals or restaurants, we take a lot of pride in what we do. And we always do the right thing. Our units are very clean, they're maintained. Even David and Brian even stay in our own units. They have coming up next week, they're staying there through Thanksgiving. They do that every year. And David and Brian have also stayed, I've stayed there. And so I think that's a testament to how well we maintain and control the short-term vacation rentals that we do, because we stay there ourselves.
Were you shocked when you got the open records response in Exhibit 13, where the town's downtown development authority director was killing your project after all that work you put in?
It was surprising.
There are further questions this time.
Anybody else have questions?
I got one. The moratorium was brought into effect 7/11/19, right? So why would you, if you're proceeding forward in the fact that you're wanting to develop SDRVO, whatever it is, or y'all want to call it, up on the mountain, then, but you knew a moratorium was in effect, how are we supposed to know you were just clearing the lots for houses, not to be rented, but to be developed and sold? What's the difference there? Is it dictated in the land disturbance permit that it was specifically for VRBO? Does that make sense? I mean, that's a long time, 7/19. You didn't clear these lots or start this, process, till well after that.
Well, when the moratorium was put in place, moratorium was to regulate, and it was not to prohibit when the moratorium first went into place. And the moratorium was extended from what I remember, it was extended once. But when it was originally put in place, it was not to prohibit any short-term vacation. It was just to where the town council and members of the board could come up with ways to regulate short-term.
Okay, that's fine, but I didn't see it in your application where you specifically stated, because you're saying that we should have known. I didn't know. I had no idea that you were developing those lots for SDVR, whatever you want to call it. I didn't know. I live on the mountain.
Right.
So where in all this documentation, I'm trying to find it. I looked,
Mhm.
but I can't find that information. You know where it's at?
We were developing these lots for both short-term and long-term
I
rentals.
know you say that, but I haven't seen that in an application, and why would you do that after the moratorium? Why would you
Well-
invest the money? That's all I'm asking.
The moratorium did not stop us from doing it. The moratorium was wanting to regulate how we were doing it.
Fair enough.
Your witness one.
Yeah. All right, what was the date of the meeting for those minutes, or exhibit 18?
I believe that was July 9th, 2020.
And that is during the time in which the public hearing is being held on the STVR ordinance.
I believe so, yes.
Now, on the applications that you've got attached to it here, page 3. The top part, description of proposed projects, says removing brush and small trees for temporary growth. So I think to Councilman Weatherly's point, how would that permit have given them notice that we're developing STVRs in those lots?
Although the permit here, description of proposed project at the time, we were just trying to clear the trees and get access into there to where we could see what we had at the time, because we had several options. We were looking at short-term vacation rentals. We had even considered long-term vacation rentals. And some of the properties, at some point in time, we don't know, could possibly be sold.
But no permits on the 14 lots, I guess what's now 13 lots. No permits were obtained before the 6/2/2020 date. These.
No land disturbance permits for these particular lots, no.
And I understand there's 4 lots, 5 lots, and then what's the artist formerly known as the 14 lots that are up the mountain.
Mhm.
The permits in exhibit 18 apply to 14 lots. There may have been others for the other lots.
Right, it was before that.
Okay. All right, and then the people who have steps on the lake, those are residential properties.
It's my understanding that those are, it is an all-one property, yes.
Now, you mentioned that, well, you said we, but presuming that to be the applicants have other STVR properties, both in Georgia and Western North Carolina. Right? Okay, so the same software and devices, stuff that could be used to manage any STVRs built in Tallulah Falls, can likewise be used to manage those, right?
We have a lot of devices. We have, everyone has computers, and all of the computers are used for managing software that apply to the short-term vacation rentals that we planning to do. Not only the ones that are mentioned in the expense report, but we have others that are not even mentioned in the expense report that are used for those groups as well.
Okay. And now the comments the officials made about wanting to generate revenue from STVRs, those comments were general in nature, or were they property specific?
I remember Mayor White at the time, Mayor Earl, when we had the conversation in November 2019, and this was after the meeting, heard right here in this room, and he mentioned that he may have some property that he may be interested in doing, short-term rental at some point in time. That was the same conversation that we had engaged in about, us possibly doing a presentation at the, one of the town council meetings on how we do short-term vacation rentals and how it works. He didn't specifically give me a lot number or a parcel number, but, he did reference. He might be interested in doing it for some property that he had. So,
And I took notes. There were a few other people that Mr. Reeves asked you if they're in the room who would make comments supporting the generation of revenue off of STVRs.
mhm.
And the answer was yes. So were those comments in support of generating revenue for the town off of STVRs directed to specific properties?
I don't recall.
Now, the plans that you gave out at the public meeting that showed the cabins. This was near the first part of your testimony there. This would have been the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on the 2019 rezoning. Those plans didn't show cabins on any of the 14 lots, did they?
At that planning and zoning, meeting in 2019, we only submitted, work that we were, planning to do on the 4 lots on the lake and the 5 lots where one of them is used for the septic and the other 4, we were, showing cabins on those. Those cabins were actually drawn in, as little squares by James Irvin, who was our engineer on those 5 lots. At that time, we did not submit, anything, for the 14 at the mountain, because our purpose was, at that meeting, was to, for rezoning for the map, for the 4 lots on the lake.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Ms. Brock, the moratorium, was that enacted immediately after the Urbans presented a rezoning and made a presentation about short-term vacation rentals?
Yes, it was.
And was the moratorium on short-term vacation rentals, was the language to regulate and collect revenue from short-term vacation rentals versus prohibiting them?
Yes.
And did the Urbans agree with that?
Yes, we had no problem with regulation. Regulation in the short-term vacation rental industry, you have to have regulations. And we plan to abide, by whatever, regulations were actually, made sense to do and it kept your property in a good condition, because you all know, if you're gonna do a short-term vacation rental, you want it to be nice, you want it to be clean, and you want it to be a property that you're gonna enjoy staying at. And these days, there's a lot of people that had rather come and stay in a quiet residential type neighborhood versus being in an atmosphere where there's a lot of noise, where there's a lot of partying. And Tallulah Falls is a quiet neighborhood, and our rentals that we have in the northern part of the county is in a very secluded area. And that's part of the draw, is because it's very secluded. And we have a lot of elderly guests that are repeats that stay with us year after year. They actually request the same unit for their anniversary or whatever event they have coming up. And, we have a lot of families that come.
So the Urbans had already presented short-term vacation rental as the work that you were doing before this moratorium got enacted, right?
Yes.
And grading and land disturbance, that wasn't addressed in the moratorium.
No, it was not.
And in 2019, I mean, Tallulah Falls it's a small world. There weren't any other new short-term vacation rentals proposed in Tallulah Falls in 2019 other than the Urbans, right?
Not that we're aware of.
And 2020.
No.
Or 2021.
No,
So this whole time, the ordinance, the moratorium, everything, we now know from Exhibit 13, it was targeted at the Urbans.
yes.
Further questions?
The ordinance adopted in 2020 actually allows short-term vacation rentals to be done in the zoning classification that you were asking to be rezoned to in 2019. Right?
Yes.
And now you said that related to Exhibit 13 and whether there are other short-term vacation rentals being proposed to your knowledge. This where he's walked you through a series of years there. Using let's do it. Isn't it equally as likely that people aren't proposing to do it in residential districts because there's an ordinance?
Well, that I would not know.
Okay.
What I do know is prior to 2019, when we came into the picture, I'm not sure who had requested permission to do short-term vacation rental. We do know that there was one happening up on Hickory Nut Mountain that's been discussed tonight. But since we have begun attending all of the meetings, we have not heard of anyone requesting to do a short-term vacation rental. But for that reason, I mean, I can't answer that.
Okay. I don't have anything else.
Ms. Brock, you were here at that rezoning hearing a month or so ago, right?
Yes.
And that's in Exhibit 19 or the notebook that mayor and council have. Did you hear several of those citizens who got up and speak? They thought that short-term vacation rentals had been abolished in Tallulah Falls.
Yes.
Same caveat on the rezoning exhibit, but have short-term vacation rentals been abolished in Tallulah Falls?
No, they have not. They've been abolished in R1.
I don't have any further questions.
I have a follow-up. Is that an effective ban to say you can do it anywhere you want except residential areas? I mean, where do you put short-term vacation rentals?
Say that one more time.
Sure. Short-term vacation rentals y'all have run and that you've seen out in the market, where are they located?
They're located in areas that people want to visit, in the mountains, on the lakes.
They're quiet, home feeling places, right?
Yes, they are.
So to say no short-term vacation rentals in a residential area, that pretty much kills it, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Have you seen any other ordinances where they've done that in Northeast Georgia?
I have not.
And did the Urbans present other ordinances from Northeast Georgia that are working well, that facilitate short-term vacation rentals and bring revenue into towns?
Yes, yes, we did.
And none
Because
of them-
I helped work on that.
and none of them had a ban in residential areas.
No,
That's defeating the whole concept.
yes.
And that's what some of the people were trying to do behind your back.
Mhm.
My only follow-up is that the ordinance hasn't prevented short-term vacation rentals from being operated on Ann Urban's properties.
Ann Urban's, operates hers, because hers has been zoned, has a different zone classification. Always has.
I don't have anything else.
It's noted in the meeting notes when the moratorium was initiated, specifically states residential zoning district. And it specifically states concern that it wouldn't affect lodging on the lake because it was in the business district. So to say it was only for, regulations is a little bit misleading. It was to get regulated, I agree, but it was specifically on residential. So you knew that before you started your endeavor on the map, what I'm trying to say. There's another reason we didn't know what you're doing. Just letting you know.
Yeah,
Okay, that's all.
we knew that the moratorium was put into place to regulate.
Yeah, and specifically residential.
And I'll jump in there from a legal perspective. If you knew that the place where short-term vacation rentals were gonna be was a residential area, that's where you would want to put the moratorium. If we're gonna go in there and start regulating,
I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying, you guys made it sound like it was just to do regulation. Well, it wasn't. I mean, you almost made it sound like it wasn't specifically pointing towards residential one. It was almost like everything. But no, it's already in business.
nobody wants to put them, nobody is trying to do new
Well, there's
short-term.
two short terms in business right now. That's what we're used to seeing. I'm not used to seeing nothing residential.
Do want to set the record straight for the record. That we have had one new short-term vacation rental come into effect since 2019 over on Old Road in a business district. So just so that it's in the record that there hasn't been one since that was a question was asked.
The land disturbance permit was in March, and then there was a second one in May,
Yeah.
and then the moratorium was.
2020.
No, 2019.
Now I thought your land disturbance permit for the lots up on top were in June 2020.
They are, it's an exhibit 18
Yeah.
that they gave out.
That's one of several. In March
Yeah,
of
that's the
2019,
lots I'm referencing, the 14 lots up top, not down below.
March 2019, what did that land disturbance permit pertain to?
The 4 lots on the lake.
May of 2019, what did that land disturbance permit pertain to?
The 5 lots just up above the lake lots.
And then the subsequent one was what?
June
Yeah.
2020.
Yes.
And then the moratorium was after that.
No,
No.
that's my point.
Okay.
So
Well, the moratorium was after the rezoning application.
The lots down below, I'm talking about the lots up top, in the current work that's been done.
Yeah.
Making it sound like you didn't know, but we all did.
And I think what, for the benefit of the other counselors, I think what he's getting is, this is not an all or nothing. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing proposition. I mean, you've got to take into account whatever is presented. But ultimately, you have to make a determination on, which lots, if any,
That's
have
correct.
vested
I'll
rights.
figure those
So I think
14 out.
that's kind of where you're going, but with the questions. that it's-
Well, and
But part of it, I mean, the concern we have is a property owner under the law we've cited has a right to pursue development of property in reliance on legality. And to have the government informed about exercising that, I mean, that's kind of backwards.
Well, we don't need to get into documents you haven't read yet, but
In 2019, did you have discussions with town officials about short-term vacation rental on all 23 lots?
we had discussions about short-term vacation rental in Tallulah Falls and on the lake and on the mountain.
On the mountain being 5 lots.
The 5 lots were included in that, yes.
Okay, but the 14 lots that are further up the mountain, that wasn't part of the conversation in 2019, right?
I,
Part of the conversation with the city officials.
I'm just not seeing
It was-
it.
go ahead.
I'm just not seeing what he's saying in here. I'm trying. I'm trying to listen, but I don't see where those 14 lots are represented prior to the moratorium.
Now, go back to last year, look at James Irvin and Ronnie Davidson and what they were doing also. I mean, she's one, I mean, their testimony from the first day of this hearing, they talked about the work at the early stages on all of them. And I think they did more up on the mountain than down on the lake in a lot of ways. So you gotta look at the whole
Prior to that
testimony.
day. Yeah, okay.
Now,
Sure.
let's add to that.
Okay.
We, as you've heard earlier tonight, we were forced to move a lot faster than we had anticipated with all of our work, whether it be the grading, whether it be tree cutting, cutting driveways, because it seemed that every step that we tried to make along the way, there was work being done to try to prevent us from doing so. And we had to move a lot faster than we had anticipated. Getting work done on all of the lots up the mountain, as well as the lots on the lake.
Because the work you did up on the mountain couldn't have been done any other time under the current rules. Doesn't make any sense. I mean, it doesn't.
That,
No one forced you to go up there and clear those lots. You could do that
No.
at any time,
no one
under the
forced,
current zoning and under the current rules.
right, no one forced
So
us
why do you
to.
say that?
There was talk of.
Maybe the lower lots, not the upper lots. Doesn't make any sense.
I'm talking about the upper lots, and there was discussion of tree ordinance coming, and there was, discussion of, when you can't cut trees to do a driveway, or,
That's the ordinance.
a tree ordinance was being discussed as putting it into place.
Discussed, okay,
Yes.
that's fine. I understand. That's
Just-
fair.
Just like the moratorium, just like the short-term
Yeah.
vacation rent. I mean, they had been down that road before. And look, I think the Urbans have been forthcoming. They prefer to deal with the 9 lots down by the lake first. And leave the 14 lots for a later date. That's been, I think they've said that in multiple meetings. And they've been forthcoming about that. But they were working on both prior to July 23rd, 2020. And spending money on both. James Irvin, Ronnie Davidson, and the expenses show that.
Anything else?
No, I'm good.
Anything anybody else wants to ask this witness? We've gotten a lot of documents tonight that we haven't necessarily seen before. I think it's probably worthwhile for everyone to read that. There may be follow-up questions that you have from that. In addition, we've got, one council member who wasn't a council member last year when we had the first part of this hearing. I'm sure he, would like the chance to look at that and to sort of, to the extent you may not have already done it, get caught up. So I think what I'd recommend to you all is, I'm trying to keep us here till midnight a different night, but they are getting quicker. So I would probably recommend to you all that we recess the hearing but not close it out, to give you a chance to review and digest those documents and then ask whatever questions down the road you may have from those. And then at that point, hopefully we'll be in a position to, at that point, close it out. But the issue is, if you close out the hearing tonight and you have questions on the documents later, then kind of hard to ask them in that proceeding. Plus, you'll have a time frame in which you have to make a decision.
Yeah, so I can make a motion to have a recess so that we can all get familiar with the documents, especially Tom.
Yeah, I think just a motion to recess the hearing for purposes of reviewing the documents presented tonight and throughout this proceeding, and then.
That would be fair. There's a lot of documents.
All right,
It's in time, don't you?
They want to watch the football Thanksgiving.
So, all right.
So we have a
so-
motion,
So I'll make a motion.
Second.
Tom seconds. That'll be unanimous. All right, then, in light of that, then we need to remove the deliberation from our agenda.
Yeah, they'll just, I guess,
I would say, you know, Johnny Urban put the mediation, and I mentioned settlement conference and declaratory judgment. If y'all want to keep executive session on, or whatever, to ask about that, we're glad to talk further on that. So tonight or later,
Yeah, I don't,
probably later.
y'all want to go over that, you can, if you want to go over that. Right now, we can do that too.
I'll send the deed first.
This is,
that's where we can get all,
Yeah,
get all this information pulled together.
I'd recommend we give Tom time to review before we.
Yeah, I don't see any other need for executive session right now. So,
Well, I think. Now, what the wording, the specific wording of the motion was, but I think that motion covers the need for deliberation. We basically recess, the motion was to recess the hearing.
Okay,
So I think it stands in recess, which means don't get to the next.
so we're not running really adjourning, we're just recessing.
Yeah, well, you can adjourn the meeting since it was a meeting for other purposes too.
Okay,
However you want to handle that, I'm fine with. Basically, if you want to make a motion to amend the agenda to have one additional item, which is adjournment, then do it that way. So in other words, just make a motion to amend the agenda to allow a motion for adjournment.
we have adjournment on the agenda, so.
I know, but you've got other items, and I think what you're looking at before is whether you need a motion to amend the agenda.
Yeah,
And I don't want to get too caught up in the
Okay.
motions. I think you handled it, so.
okay, so then let's have a motion to amend the agenda
I make a motion to amend the agenda to settle
to adjourn the issue.
the outside of here.
Second, all in favor? All right, and then a motion to adjourn. Jerry makes a motion to adjourn, Larry seconds, all in favor, it's unanimous.
Thank y'all.
I know.
All right.
Matt, you want to?
Yeah, let's,